Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Today is Gizan Blessing Day. And over the last number of years, we would traditionally tell some stories about Gizan. The legends, the mythology related to Gizan. And I thought we might do something a little different today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Gizan, but I'm also going to talk about preparing for your last breath. Sounds like a fun subject. So I'm going to start my talk with the beginning of the sutra, of the past vows of the Earth School of Bodhisattva, the Gizan. So it always begins in the traditional way, and for those of you who know it, you can join me. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. The unsurpassed, profound, and wonderful Dharma is difficult to encounter in hundreds of millions of eons. I now see and hear it, receive it, and uphold it. I vow to fathom the Tathagata's true meaning. So the sutra begins with these words. Thus have I heard, at one time the Buddha was in the Triasimsa, heaven, speaking the Dharma for his mother. At that time, uncountably many Buddhas and great Bodhisattva Mahasattvas from infinite worlds in the 10 directions assembled to praise how Shakyamuni Buddha is able to manifest powerfully great wisdom and spiritual penetrations. So this is the beginning, this is what is being chanted at the Gizan Hall as we speak. So the Triya Strimsha realm is in the Buddhist cosmology in Mahayana. There are different levels of mind states. And these mind states are not necessarily visible mind states, the things that we would see in trees and the world in which we live. And there are these different levels. And this is the second level of the actually 33 levels. So this is the second of those levels. And that's what he's referring to. The 33 levels, and this is the place at which the Buddha's mother's mind state is after she passed. So this sutra continues now with a story about a young girl whose mother had blasphemed the Buddha, said bad things about the Buddha during her life, and when she passed away, she entered one of the hell realms. And her daughter, loving her mother so much, beseeched Manjushri to allow her to change places with her mother, so that the little girl would suffer the pains of hell, while her mother would be liberated due to the little girl's merits. So the sutra continues with the story of how this takes place, and Manjushri takes the little girl to see her mother, and the mother is liberated, and then how, by virtue of this great vow that this girl has taken, that she's able to transform herself into the great Bodhisattva Gizan. So this is again, the chanting that the monastics are doing this morning, of how this transformation takes place. And one of the great moments in this Earth Store Bodhisattva practice, Nizam, or Kikikarba in Sanskrit, is until the hell realms are empty, I vow not to become a Buddha. Only after all beings are saved will I myself attain Bodhi. So Nizam represents the strong vow of helping all beings, even those whose minds have entered into the hell realms, so that they can one day be liberated and attain the Bodhi, the enlightenment. And so the Bodhisattva, consistent with the Bodhisattva path, says, I won't enter into Bodhi until all beings have made that transition. So there are many ways to understand this practice, but I want to just say a few things about the term Earth Store, because this is a little bit confusing what the Earth Store is. So one of the things that we practice here, the verses that we practice, is that all the 5 remembrances. I am of the nature to grow old. There is no way to escape growing old. I am of the nature to fall ill. There is no way to escape falling ill. I am of the nature to die. There is no way to escape death. All that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature to change. There is no way to escape being separated from them. My actions are the ground on which I stand. I inherit the results of my actions in body, speech, and mind. My actions are the ground on which I stand. So this is one of the aspects of the Earth Store. The Earth Store is the collection of all of our actions. It has to do with the development of our cause and effect energy. So cause and effect energy results in the ground on which we stand, the experiences that we have. So this body that we are experiencing, this is referred to and translated as what's called the retribution body. In other words, this body experiences what it needs in order to make progress. It's not a punishment. It is the opportunity that we have to attain Bodhi, to attain enlightenment. So if the mind state is in the lower realm of experience, whenever the person experiences something, much moaning and complaining. Well, why is this happening to me? Guilt and shame, all of these negative aspects come to the mind, and the mind sees all obstacles as punishment, something terrible. But when the person begins to practice on the path, they begin to see that when difficulties arise, these are actually wonderful opportunities to make progress. So the difficulty happens, you say, oh, opportunity to practice better. Let's see if I can remain calm in the face of this particular difficulty. Let's see if I can go through this particular difficulty without creating distress for others, without creating distress for myself. Let's see. Great opportunity. Like a child in school who enjoys learning. When they take the test, they say, oh, let me see how well I can do it. Not so much competition-wise, but just in terms of saying, great opportunity for me. So Dizan is one of the 4 great bodhisattvas. We have Manjushri that represents wisdom, We have Avalokiteshvara, or Guan Yin, representing the mind state of compassion. We have Samadhi, who represents purity of virtue. And we have Bizan, who represents the process of learning about how it is that we practice for death and how that transition goes. There's also a collection of 8 great bodhisattvas who also include the medicine Buddha, for example, in 2 aspects. The medicine Buddhas who diagnoses the problems of suffering, and then another form of the medicine Buddha mind state that knows how to treat the problems. There's a jeweled flower platform bodhisattva who is able to help the mind use the right words to translate the Dharma, so that our experiences that look like very great difficulties become jeweled flowers. There's another bodhisattva, the inexhaustible intention bodhisattva, who understands cause and effect. And there's a Maitreya, who is the Buddha of the next age. The next great Buddha after Shakyamuni, the next one will be called Maitreya. So these are just different ways of understanding. So during the standing meditation, I had us practicing the 21 stages of the breath from the original Abhidhamma text. In the Buddhist system, there's the suttas, the discourses, there's the Vinaya, which is the code of conduct, and then there's the Abhidhamma, which is the psychological explanation of what's going on during our practice. So one of these teachings is on the 21 aspects of our breath. So when we were standing, we did the first 12, which is the rising of the breath, the continuing, and the fullness of the breath. The moment of pressure, the slight pause, the beginning of the breathing out, the pressure being released, the continuing breathing out, the cessation of breathing out, the slight pause, and this subtle urgency to begin the breath again, and then the release of the urgency. So there's something important about this in terms of our practice for the last breath. Because everyone will at one time, usually only one time, although some people may get it more than once, experience in this body, in mind, will experience their last breath. So, like a good athlete who knows that he's going to be or she's going to be in the Olympics, they practice before the race. A violinist who knows they're going to give a recital, they practice before the recital. Jascha Heifetz, one of the greatest violinists of the 20th century, said that if he did not practice his violin for one day, he knew it. If he didn't practice for 2 days, his wife knew it. If he didn't practice for 3 days, the whole world knew it. So practicing, we know we're going to experience the recital. That moment where our mind and body will dissolve. It's a guarantee. Sometimes we have experiences where we might experience like, oh, this could be happening. Last month, I had a trip planned to go to Hawaii with my wife. lots of excitement. But 2 days before, I had irregular heart rhythm. Ended up in the hospital. They gave me medication to try to control the atrial fibrillation, and my blood pressure dropped very fast, lower than should be, and all the machines in the room went off. People rushed in. At that moment, I paid very close attention. As the nurse said, you feel like you're going to lose consciousness. So I paid very close attention at the moment when I was going to take an inhale. Can I inhale? How much clinging, how much distress, how much peacefulness, how much letting go, paying attention. Sending my mind to direct it to where my intention wants it to go. I had a very skillful nurse. She took care of everything. My blood pressure came back up, and after a few days, my heart went back into regular rhythm. I'm perfectly fine, no danger. AFib in itself is not so dangerous. The treatment sometimes is dangerous. So I call these experiences death rehearsal. So some years ago, one of my teachers, who was Tibetan, said to me, he said, "Taman Shushu, it is time for you to prepare for death." This is not something you want to hear from the Lama. I said, "Lama, do you know something I don't know?" He said, "Yes." I said, "What is it?" He said, "You will die." I said, "Lama, do you know when?" He says, "Americans are very strange. They think that I can see into the future. I have no idea. I just know it will happen, so it's time to practice." I said, "Okay." He says, "I will teach you the 9-point meditation on death. So every night you go and you sit in the meditation room, no light on in the meditation room, not even a candle, and you sit and you do the 9-point meditation on death, and then you picture all the different ways you can die." I thought, oh, this sounds like fun. So I sat. I was, able to do the 9-point meditation on death, picturing all the different ways of dying, particularly by getting out, those kinds of things. And then I would get very sleepy, and I fell over, and I hit my elbow, hit my shoulder. One time I hit my head, and I thought, Lama is very compassionate. He would not want me to hurt myself like this. So I snuck back into the room where my wife was sleeping, and I sat on the bed and continued the practice. And then I fell over, and I fell on top of my wife. And she said, "What are you doing?" "I'm going to kill you." And I said, "No, please don't. I haven't practiced that one yet." So she said, "Please go and pick some cushions and some pillows and put them around you in the meditation room. And then when you fall over, you'll fall on the pillows and not on me." See, sometimes the wife is mightier than the Lama. So this is the practice called Atisha's 9-point meditation on death. So I suggest to you that you think about these. If you need a copy of it, I can get it to you. But the 9-point meditation on death is very good to practice. And the idea at first, the first level of practice is to examine and see if you believe it's true, these things. So there are what are called the 3 roots, the 9 reasonings, and the 3 convictions. So the first root is called the definite nature of death. And then the 3 reasonings that are related to this is everyone in the past has died. There is no way to extend life indefinitely. And much of what we do is transitory. And then the aspiration is take up a spiritual path. So this is the first section. And there are ways of going through this in meditation where you practice this for about a week. You memorize these verses and then you examine, is this true? And then at the next level, when you recognize, okay, I can accept that this is true, then you can go deeper into the fact that this is going to be something that you need to recognize and realize within yourself. The second is called the indefiniteness of the time of one's death. So people die at all different ages. The causes of life are few, and the causes of death are many. I was just having a conversation with one of my patients who is trying to get pregnant, and they're using in vitro. I don't know that the Buddha knew about in vitro, but he had talked about how some beings come from spores and some hatch from eggs and others from sexual relations. These are different ways of being born. So these are important. But many causes of death, the ICD-10, and very thick book. Every time I meet a new patient who has a particular disease, many times I have to look it up. I've never heard of the disease. And they have very long names. And the third is precious human life is as fragile as a bubble of water. Take up a spiritual path. Now is the aspiration. The third of the three sections, at the time of death only, our spiritual achievements are of value. Three reasonings. Friends, relatives, and even doctors cannot prevent death, nor can they go with us. Power, wealth, and fame are of no help. Even our cherished body is left behind like a pile of garbage. I like that one. Practice the spiritual path purely without regard for worldly concerns. That's the final aspiration. Practice the path purely without regard for worldly. When they're talking about the worldly concerns, they're referring specifically, well, we can talk in general about all the worldly concerns, but this has to do with specifically what's called the 8 worldly concerns. May I not be elated by praise, may I not be offended by insult, may I not be pleased by receiving what I want, may I not be displeased by not receiving what I want, may I not be encouraged by success, may I not be discouraged by failure, may I not be happy in being comfortable, may I not be unhappy in being uncomfortable. So there's further practice that a person would do once they're able to sustain their mind in picturing all the different ways that they can die. There is the what are called the dissolution phase of the practice, where the person recognizes their elements within their body, the earth dissolving into water, and the water dissolving into fire, fire dissolving into the air, and the air dissolving into spaciousness, etc. And then there are deeper levels of practice where we recognize our consciousness dissolving. 4 different stages. I won't go into this so much. And then there's a visualization practice of different colors. Where a person pictures a radiant blue color all the way through white, yellow, red, green, near black, and pure radiant light. So this is a Tibetan practice, but I want to say a few things about the Dharma teachings to laypersons about death that you can find in the suttas. And there are two main examples of this teaching to laypersons who are about to die that are contained within the suttas. So I want to just say a few words about this. One is called the Dhananjani Sutta. Sometimes pronounced Dhananjani, but either way. We meet Dhananjani in an earlier sutta. He is a tax collector, and he's having a lot of stress. And he goes to Sariputta and he says, I'm having a lot of suffering here. And Sariputta gives him some teachings, and he doesn't receive them particularly very well. And then he goes back to Sariputta and says, you know, this isn't working very well for me. You gave me these teachings not so good. And Sariputta very patiently explains it to him again, and this time it makes a little bit more sense, and he begins to start practicing. So there's this teaching about another, the layperson, Dhananjani. When the Buddha heard that he was very ill, he asked Sariputta, who had been his teacher. Sariputta is one of the great disciples, very close to the Buddha. He says if he would please go and visit Dhananjani and give him teachings on his sickbed. And Sariputta returns to the Buddha after he does this, and he says that he gave him the teachings on the four great mind states, the four divine abodes. And then according to the sutta, the Buddha says to him, why, Sariputta, while there was still more to do, did you set the Brahman Dhananjani's thoughts on the inferior Brahma world, and then rising from your seat, leave him? So this is very unusual because it is very uncommon that the Buddha would correct Sariputta. Maybe one of the few times that this is found in the suttas. There's another occasion where in an interaction with the lay disciple Chitta that Sariputta has to go and receive some correction. But this is very rare because he was such a great practitioner. So why is it that the Buddha said this to Sariputta? It's not explained in the sutta, nor is there any explanation of what he meant when he said, while there was more to do. Not explained. So what Sariputta actually taught him was the Brahmavihara practice, which we know about here at Mava, where we practice developing and cultivating within our mind loving kindness, compassion, altruistic joy, and equanimity, the four great mind states. And these are very important mind states that all peoples could develop within their own practice, and that this mind state is the foundation for going further into higher levels of practice called the absorptions or the jhanas. So, of course, we know that practicing these four great mind states or abodes where the mind lives, if we can fill our mind with loving kindness, compassion, altruistic joy, and equanimity, this is a very, very healthy thing. I'm going to ask Sharon if she would to check, to stick her finger outside and see if we are able to walk to the Izan Hall without getting wet. Because there's always more to do. So what does this mean, the deeper teaching on the preparation for death? Well, this was of great perplex to me. I didn't understand this, and I tried to examine and read and understand this, and then just a few months ago, Venerable Kongmu was here, and we were driving somewhere together. Bhikkhu Bodhi was not with us at this time.
We would get wet without umbrellas.
Okay, so it's still
It's
raining.
still pretty
Yeah,
steady.
I think we will use discretion. And Bhikkhu Bodhi was not with us. I think this was around the time that he was also in town. And Venerable Kongmu, I asked him, I said, what do you think about this deeper teaching? And he said, you know, I think we should look at the Anathapindika Sutta. We also pronounce his name Anathapindika, but we're all trying to get better at our Pali. Anathapindika Sutta. So this particular sutta, took a look at it and said, ah, here it is. So I went to see the translation that Thanissaro Bhikkhu had done on this, and I discovered that in the translation there was a misprint. At the time when the teaching was being given to Anathapindika, in the translation of Thanissaro Bhikkhu, I apologize to you, he's a great monk, there was a misprint, and it said, Dhananjani, the fellow from our first talk, discussion, Dhananjani, he was referenced. Now, I went into the Pali, I saw this was a mistake, and I wrote to Thanissaro Bhikkhu, and he said, oh yes, indeed, this is a mistake. So corrected the mistake. But why? Because when Thanissaro Bhikkhu was translating the Anathapindika Sutta, he must have been thinking in his mind, oh, this refers back to the Nanjani. So this was a little bit of evidence. So what happens in the Anathapindika Sutta? The teaching has 9 parts. The first 3 parts have to do with no clinging to our 6 senses, no clinging to the 6 external phenomena, no clinging to the 6 sense consciousnesses. So this is called the 18 constituents of our perception. Our eye is the sense organ, the external object is form, and the consciousness, the sense consciousness, is how the eye actually works in relationship to the brain to create this connection. You can have an eye, but if the eye isn't connected through the optic nerve to the occipital lobe, there's no vision. So you have to have the sense consciousness too. So those are the first 3 parts. Then the next 3, this has to do with the dissolution of the 6 points of contact. This is the 6 senses. The 6th sense is the mind. And the dissolution then of the feelings of the contact from the 5 elements of the form realm. So we're no longer connecting to any feelings that we have about the feeling that we get from our form, from the water element, from the heat element, and from the air element. There's a dissolution. And then there is the dissolution from the 5 aggregates. And when we were standing at the very end, I led you through the 4 elements and the 5 aggregates, of the body, the feelings, the perception, conception, the habit energy, and their consciousness. So this also dissolves. Now certainly, these things can dissolve in terms of when we pass away, but there's also another type of dissolution that can take place when the mind enters into the highest level of wisdom, Prajnaparamita. So, for example, when we are reciting the Heart Sutra, it begins with the story of Avalokiteshvara, who's deeply immersed in the perfection of wisdom, who clearly perceives the empty nature of the 5 skandhas, the 5 aggregates, and transcends all suffering. There's this dissolution of the 5 aggregates. At that stage of our awareness, but the body and mind are still alive. So it's not necessary to have this happen at the moment of death, but very important for it to happen in our preparation for the moment of death, because we don't want to be holding on, oh no, I don't want to leave my body. Oh, I don't want to leave my feelings. I don't want to leave my conception of who I am, my consciousness. I don't want to lose all of that. I want to hold on to it. So in the next three stages of the dissolution of the formless realm, this is entering into the deeper jhanas, so the dissolution of the consciousness on 4 levels, and then the total full dissolution of all attachments to samsara, the world of birth and death, and then a summary portion where no clinging takes place. So I'm not going to read the entire sutta to you, but I'm going to just read one portion so you can get a flavor of what happens. This is the teaching that Sariputta is giving to Anathapindika. Then householder, so you could put anybody's name, including your own there. You should train yourself in this way. I won't cling to the eye, my consciousness will not be dependent on the eye. That is how you should train yourself. I won't cling to the ear, my consciousness will not be dependent on the ear. I won't cling to the nose, my consciousness will not be dependent on the nose. I won't cling to the tongue, my consciousness will not be dependent on the tongue. I won't cling to the body, my consciousness will not be dependent on the body. And I won't cling to the intellect mind, my consciousness will not be dependent on the intellect mind. That is how you should train yourself. So we do this for the 6 organs, the 6 sense bases, and the 6 sense consciousnesses, the 6 points of contact, the feeling that results from contact, the dissolution of the elements in the form realm, and then the 5 aggregates. And I'll read to you from the 5 aggregate section. Then, householder, you should train yourself in this way. I won't cling to form, my consciousness will not be dependent on forms. I won't cling to feelings, my consciousness will not be dependent on feelings. I won't cling to perception and conceptions. My consciousness will not be dependent on perceptions and conceptions. I won't cling to thought fabrications and habitual patterns. My consciousness will not be dependent on the thought fabrications. I won't cling to consciousness. My consciousness will not be dependent on consciousness. That is how you should train yourself. And then the formless realm is dissolved, the attachment to samsara is resolved, and then there's also at the very end, then householder, you should train yourself in this way. I won't cling to what is seen, heard, sensed, cognized, attained, sought after, pondered by the intellect. My consciousness will not be dependent on that. That is how you should train yourself. So this is the rehearsal, the practice. So in conclusion to my talk, we dedicate our practice to all those who have been suffering. We do this also resolving to practice the 4 kinds of kindness. 4 kinds of kindness. First include giving, can be material or non-material. Loving words. Always, when we speak to others, to practice loving words. Be beneficial in our conduct. Do what will help others. Work together. Don't put oneself at a higher or lower level, but at the same level with others. These are the 4 kinds of kindnesses. May the merit and virtue accrued from this work adorn the Buddha's pure lands, repaying 4 kinds of kindness above, and aiding those suffering in the path below. May those who see and hear this all bring forth the resolve for Bodhi. And when this retribution body is over, be born together in the land of ultimate bliss.